Welcome back to America Decides. The first criminal trial of an American president is now in the hands of a Manhattan jury. The 12 New Yorkers on that jury began deliberations today. Of course, they must decide whether or not to convict the former president or acquit him, or possibly there could be a hung jury. Day one has ended. No verdict. They'll come back tomorrow. CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us now. Jessica, I'm always so grateful to have you with us because you help us focus on what matters and look away from what may be interesting but doesn't matter as most. What are the most meaningful, from your vantage point, legal takeaways from today?
Well, I think the most meaningful is that the judge reminded us of what we should all remember, that people are presumed innocent in this country, that it is the prosecutor's burden to prove that there is guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and that we can't take anything from the former president's decision not to testify, that we can't infer, oh, it must be that he really has something to hide. I think the next kind of bucket of things that were particularly meaningful today, obviously what the jury asked. The jury went straight to the heart of the prosecution's case here. Their questions focused on that Trump Tower meeting. And specifically, I think what they're asking is for clarification on the prosecution's argument that there was this criminal conspiracy that was entered into in order to try and catch and kill stories that would have harmed the Trump candidacy for president. And not just that there was that criminal conspiracy, but that the former president is connected to it. The next thing they did, showing that they're taking their jobs very seriously, is they said, we want to hear more about the jury instructions. Can you read some of them back to me? So this indicates to me they're taking their job really seriously. They're going to the heart of the prosecution's argument. And I think that it will be fascinating to see what happens tomorrow if there are more questions.
Jessica, you talked about that request for the Trump Tower meeting and the prosecution's assertion that it was part of a larger effort with intent to commit a felony, which is what takes these business document falsifications and raises them to the level of a felony. The jury's curiosity about that, there's no way to know, but do you interpret that as something that is something the prosecution would regard as a net positive?
I think so. One thing I would just clarify is it's not actually intent to commit another felony. And I think this is where this case gets complicated. And this is where the defense is hoping it just gets too complicated. And so what we have, according to the prosecution theory, is actually misdemeanor plus misdemeanor equals felony. The prosecution is saying here there was a falsification of business records, and they have to prove that Trump intended to falsify those business records, that he knew they were fraudulent. That's the misdemeanor. Step two, getting us up to a felony. And why were they falsified? To commit or conceal another crime. But that other crime can still be a misdemeanor. You can add those two misdemeanors up to a felony. The other crime that they're looking at is a New York state law that says don't unlawfully interfere with an election. And then what's unlawful interference? The prosecution has then walked through, maybe it's federal campaign finance violations, maybe it's tax violations, maybe it's other fraudulent business records. But I think it shows that the prosecution has work to do here. They have work to get the jury to the finish line of a conviction.
I want to ask you about something else that happened today, Jessica, completely unrelated to the Trump trial, because I think with your two answers, we've covered a lot of the basic and essential legal ground for today. Associate Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito informed Congress today by letter that he will not recuse himself from any of the matters related to January 6th or former President Trump, saying the controversies such as they exist over flags flown at his properties are entirely the fault of his wife. His wife is an independent actor. He didn't confer with her, didn't deal with her, and none of this violates understood and accepted ethics on the Supreme Court. Your reaction to that or assessment?
So my reaction is this is entirely predictable. I think there was no chance that Justice Alito was going to recuse himself. I think he firmly believes that he does not need to, that he has not done anything wrong. The one thing that I would say is that these ethics codes are complicated, but when it comes down to it, they're asking about whether or not it might appear to the public like a judge is biased, like a judge possesses actual bias. You don't need to, in the words of the Supreme Court opinions, actually possess the bias, but it has to look like you might. Justice Alito is saying that's not going to happen. People will understand spouses are separate people with separate actions, and they don't always act in concert together. And I think some people would say it looks bad enough that when it comes to the January 6 cases, he should have stepped down.
Jessica Levinson, as always, thank you very much.